So, should we bring in the closer? And
I think it'd be a good time for that.
All right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Free Baseball Podcast presented by theathleteshub.org. As always, I am Davis Bird, and I'm joined by my magnanimous co-host, Jake Crumpler. I think I used that one last podcast. Oh, well, I can't think of any more adjectives. Someone please get me a thesaurus. But special episode today, lots to talk about, but it's also pretty nice number episode, Jake. What number?
That's right. We made it.
We did it.
Now we can, this is our last episode. We got to number 69.
Yeah,
we can finally call it quits.
Yeah, we're retiring. The only other funny number we can get to is 420, and that's, oh my God, that's so many.
That's like 5 years from now. I mean, at this rate, we've done like 16. We're probably on pace for like, I don't know, 80 every 2 years, 40 a year.
Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. We're doing better than like when we had the first year struggles where we had like 5 perfect and then we missed like 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, 40 a year would take us 10 and a half years to get to 420.
We're in it for the long haul, just like this baseball season is, and we're in the swing of things right now with the trade deadline, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get there, we have to talk, as always, about our hot weeks, and this is going to go back to July 19th, since we missed a little bit of time, but that's okay. And since July 19th, one of the best players in baseball has been Ha-Seong Kim, and you can say the same for
one of the most players in baseball.
One of the most good players in baseball has been Ha-Seong Kim of the San Diego Padres. He's hitting .414. He's got a .553 on base percentage. He's slugging .759 since the 19th, which is just ridiculous. He scored 8 runs. He's hit 3 home runs for a guy that doesn't have a crazy amount of power, and he plays in a pitcher's park, which is very good. 4 RBI, 3 steals, 0.9 F-WAR, almost 1 full F-WAR in just a week. And Ha-Seong Kim, he's leading all of baseball, and we talk mainly about Fangraph stats and F-WAR, but as we determined before the podcast, Jake corrected me, that this man leads all of baseball in B-WAR. He is the league leader in Baseball Reference WAR right now. Probably the front runner for the Platinum Glove also. I don't know how you really view that. But yeah, Ha-Seong Kim has had an incredible season, and it's a shame that he's not getting a lot of natural recognition or national recognition because he's just been an excellent baseball player. It's a shame that the Padres haven't really been living up to it so he can get a shine.
Yeah, he's currently tied for the major league lead in Baseball Reference WAR at 5.2, and it's mostly because of his defense WAR, which leads baseball at 2.0. Second behind him is Ryan McMahon at 1.8. and Gabriel Moreno of the Diamondbacks at 1.8 as well. But yeah, he's having his best offensive season, which is great to see because I was super hyped when he came over from Korea because he had such great numbers there. He was super young. He's coming over at 25. He's going to be in the prime of his career, but he struggled his first year. Last year was pretty solid, 3.7 F-WAR, which a lot of that was due to his defensive ability. He wasn't the best hitter, 105 WRC plus, which is still better than league average. And this year he's really tapped into the power, which we've been waiting for. This was a guy who was hitting 30 home runs in his final season in KBO before coming over here. He's up to 14 home runs this year. He's stolen 20 bases. He's walking more than ever by a significant margin. And that's helped him out across the board. He's up to a 128 WRC plus. He's just about to cross his career high in F-WAR as well. And it's been great to see the barrel rate has gone up a lot as well. StatCast doesn't fully back up everything that he's done, but I think it's probably because he's pulling balls in the air more often. And yeah, he's got the highest fly ball rate of his career, but not the highest pull rate. So something must be up. He must have made a couple changes, but it's good to see him figuring things out with the Padres and looking like one of the best players in baseball, which is really surprising considering I don't think if you gave people many guesses, they would be guessing guys that may have made the All-Star team, which Ha-Seong Kim did not.
Yeah, that's also a pretty big snub that we didn't talk about because he probably should have made it. Ha-Seong Kim's been really good. I know he was super hyped up when he came over from KBO because he was so young and he was such a star over there. I think he played for like the Kiwoom Heroes, and everyone got to watch him a little bit that last little season, like when, we had the pandemic and we got to watch KBO. Here's this guy, he'll get to come over, we'll get to watch him play. And the potential has always been there, but now he's sort of really realizing it. He's like 0.1 F-WAR off of his career best, as you've already said. He's also like, I think he's got 21 steals right now, and his career high is like 33, and he's played 99 games. So like, he could potentially reach a career high in steals. He has a chance to hit his career high in home runs too, since it's 30.
Oh, you're talking about comparing with KBO as well?
Yeah, with KBO,
Yeah, okay.
not just MLB stats, but that would be great. I think
he's already done that for MLB.
Yeah, he had 20, like he had 12 last year. I think his career high was 33 or something like that. He could probably
33 steals in 2019 in KBO and 30 home runs in 2020 in the KBO.
Yeah, so hopefully he can continue to do this, and hopefully the Padres can try to continue their claim towards a wild card spot, which sort of seems to be falling by the wayside. And then the other one that we're going to talk about a hitter, going to talk about a pitcher, Zach Wheeler, the Philadelphia Phillies. Also sort of a team that has been in a little bit of a free fall this season, trying to be in the mix in the wild card spots. But Zach Wheeler is doing his best to keep them there against the Cleveland Guardians on the 22nd. He went 7 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. He got 17 whiffs, which was good for a 28% called strikes plus whiffs percentage. And against the Pittsburgh Pirates on the 28th, he went 6 2/3 innings pitched, gave 3 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk again. This time 11 strikeouts, 15 whiffs, which was good for a 33% called strikes plus whiffs percentage.
Yeah, he's been pretty unlucky all year. I think he's one of the guys that is an ace, but doesn't really get that recognition because he's underperformed. I mean, he was the Cy Young runner-up in 2021. I think he should have won that year. And last year he was really good, but tossed just 153 innings due to injuries. But this year he's been fully healthy and great all year. He's got a 3.74 ERA, but that's been coming down. It was over 4 entering July, and his FIP is one of the best in baseball. It's 2.74. So he's pitching really well this year, and he's having a great second half thus far. These past 2 starts are really indicative of that. His 4-seamer has been unhittable recently. It had 11 whiffs in that first start, going for 36% CSW, and had 6 whiffs in the second start for 41% CSW. So that's been his go-to pitch recently. But yeah, this is a guy that can basically do everything. He strikes out batters, doesn't walk people. PLV absolutely loves him, a metric by Pitcher List. But yeah, I think Wheeler is one of those like underrated aces where I think he's very clearly an ace, but he doesn't really get that same recognition as being one of the best pitchers in baseball, because he doesn't like blow people away with the strikeout numbers, and he's more of like a compiler that's pretty solid. But he's been great for the past four years or so.
Yeah, interesting. You talked about the 4-seamer, because the 4-seamer this season has been complete nails for him. Expected batting average against that pitch alone is like 195, and he's got a +10 run value for the 4-seamer. And I really agree with the Wheeler take. Everyone talks with the Phillies about Aaron Nola, like he's the de facto ace of the team. I feel like the last couple of seasons it's been Zach Wheeler, because he's been more consistent, and he just never gets quite the shine that he really should as one of the best pitchers in baseball. Everyone knows like, oh yeah, Zach Wheeler is good. Nobody puts him in the upper echelon of pitchers, and I think that's pretty much where he is. So it's good to see Zach Wheeler really doing well and finally getting a little bit of run support. He got like a 3.74 ERA, and he's like 8-5, and he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. You talk like he's like right up there in league leaders for FIP, and I think he's up there in league leaders for xFIP as well. And he's just not getting any help from his teammates, but they seem to be picking him up, and the Phillies themselves trying to surge, get a playoff spot, and stay in the mix of things. So it's good to see for Zach Wheeler. And then our players of the week in the AL is going to be Alex Kirilloff of the Minnesota Twins. And on the NL, it's going to be Austin Riley in the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, Kirilloff had 4 home runs in a 6-game span, which was topped by Austin Riley somehow. Austin Riley was going off. But Kirilloff finally looking to get his legs under him. This is a guy that's been struggling with wrist injuries for the past 3 years, and that's really held him back from reaching his potential. I think he's like a really great pure hitter. He just has been unable to stay on the field. This year, played 68 games, probably playing 69 today in honor of us. But he's batting 271, 127 WRC plus. The thing is, he's striking out more than he used to, which I think was one of the things that made him appealing. He was like a very good hitter with a low 20% strikeout rate, but he's been striking out a little bit more. But this guy's pretty promising. I mean, he's still only 25, so he's still got a lot more room to grow, but if those wrist injuries don't go away, they may keep him from reaching his fullest potential. But I think he's like a very solid hitter. And once he puts together like a complete full season where he's playing to what he can do, which maybe we see that next year, I think he's going to be a guy that could make a run at an all-star team.
I could see that. And the Twins are sort of a team that are in a little bit of flux. I know they had the Bomba squad a couple years ago, and I backed them to win that division, which, I mean, any team in baseball right now could probably win that division outside, the really, really bad ones. But I backed the Twins to win that division, partly because I like Alex Kirilloff and I like their young bats that they have with that team. But the Twins are a pretty interesting team, just like Alex Kirilloff, because he kind of figures in to be a big part of their future plans. Along with like Edouard Julien and a lot of their guys that they have yet to call up. This Twins team has been really interesting for me this season because they're sort of like a weird flux team that are still sort of in the mix to win that division. But it's good to see Alex Kirilloff have a stretch of sustained success, even despite all the strikeouts. Because I think he's like at a career high right now for actually playing in the majors. I know he's had a cup of coffee a couple other times, but it's good to see that he's actually doing well. 127 WRC plus for the season. Hopefully he can stay off the injuries and continue to be a mainstay in their lineup.
Yeah. And Austin Riley also had his own homer binge, and it was pretty impressive to see. He gotten off to a pretty slow start to the season, but then in mid-July, starting on the 18th, he went on a 5-game span where he hit 6 home runs, and it was 2 in the first day, and then he just kept hitting 1 more every subsequent day. And it was pretty amazing to see. He had 16 RBIs in that 5-day span, and it really boosted his WRC plus entering that stretch. He had a WRC plus of, drum roll please, 103, and then not even including like the days following that 6-game span, that 5-game span, the past 4 days. We're not going to include those, but if you just throw in those 5 games, it takes him from 103 to 118. And he's boosted that a little. He's pulled it down a little. He's back down to 117. But after, like I said, having a pretty slow first half for his standards, especially after setting career highs across the board in 2022, he's really getting back on track, and his numbers are looking a lot more in line with what they've been the past 2 years, where he's been one of the best power hitters in baseball.
Definitely. He's actually 5th in slugging percentage since the All-Star break with a 813 slug just since the All-Star break. And his 5-game binge where he hit a home run in all 5 is tying a Braves record, ties the Braves record for most home runs in consecutive games. He's the 10th one, actually, just to show you just how blessed the Braves have been. But 5 home runs or a home run in 5 consecutive games, 10th Brave ever to do that, tying the record. So cool little bit of history for Austin Riley. He's been really, really good. And on to the crux of our show while Jake is doing something.
There's a deer in my backyard.
Nice. Did you take a picture of it? Show it. Sick. Nice deer, brother.
Thank you.
Nice deer, brother. So now that Jake has shown off the wonderful animal that is probably being traded to our podcast right now, we can talk about the trade deadline deals that have already happened. There's a couple that have happened today, and hopefully will continue to happen while we're talking about it. But we can start off with the first one that sort of kicked off the trade frenzy. And it's nice that we ended off with Austin Riley of the Atlanta Braves, because the first trades do involve the Atlanta Braves. And they traded for Pierce Johnson from the Colorado Rockies in exchange for Victor Vodnik, who was a relief pitcher prospect. He's the number 10 prospect in Atlanta's farm. He will become the number 20 prospect in Colorado's farm system, and starting pitcher prospect Tanner Gordon, who is the 26th prospect on the Braves' top 30, and he's not in the top 30 for the Rockies.
Yeah, Pierce Johnson, a big Rockies guy. I don't think he liked pitching there. His ERA was really getting screwed there. This is a guy that's been pretty solid in the past few years for the Padres. He struggled last year in a small sample, but was supported by really good underlying metrics. And this year, 5.75 ERA, but he's pitching in Coors. So of course, he's got a 3.94 xFIP. Luckily, the Braves don't really have to rely on him. They are without Nick Anderson and AJ Minter for now. Nick Anderson likely out for the regular season. So they do need a little bit of depth in that bullpen, but that's exactly what Pierce Johnson is going to be. Depth. They've got Joe Jimenez. They've got Kirby Yates. They've got other dudes in that bullpen that makes it so that they don't have to rely on Pierce Johnson. But not only do I trust the Braves to do pretty well in most of their trades, but Pierce Johnson will pitch a lot better outside of Coors. He strikes out a lot of guys. He walks a lot of guys. He's a 30% strikeout guy and near 13% walk guy. But I think that could still work out well outside of Coors, where he really struggled. He saved 13 ball games for the Rockies. So, I mean, I guess this just means Pierce Johnson gets more opportunities to be a grid guy. He played for the Giants and Cubs.
Yeah, he did. I like this trade a lot. I typically like reliever trades because they're really low risk. Anyway, they didn't give up much of anything to get this guy. Pierce Johnson away from Coors is really good. He's obviously got the Coors tax really taking a toll on him, but this season he has a 2.34 FIP in away games, and he has a 2.85 xFIP in away games, and that's because he has to play in pitcher hell, which is Coors Field for Colorado. So I like this. They really needed help with their bullpen. It's been sort of shaky anyway, even despite the injuries. It hasn't been as good as it has been in the last few seasons. So getting Pierce Johnson, a guy that, can be pretty good. He's obviously got really disgusting stuff. You watch him pitch. I mean, he's really good. He just walks a lot of guys. The Braves pitching coaching can probably iron that out a little bit. And if not, like you said, they don't really need to rely on him. They also made another reliever trade, which we can talk about right now, and that is acquiring Taylor Hearn from the Texas Rangers for cash considerations. I wish we had the picture of the baseball card cash considerations. You are muted.
You're right. Yeah, that would have been a good one. Taylor Hearn has been a guy that's interested me in the past. He throws really hard and he's left-handed. That's really about all he can do. Maybe the Braves can turn him into something, but this is definitely like a super depth play. I'm not even sure he's on the team's major league roster right now. So that one's not really huge. The Rockies' return though for Pierce Johnson was, I think, a little better than expected. I mean, for a guy like Pierce Johnson, who's a rental, that I wouldn't really think that too many teams were like, oh my gosh, got to get Pierce Johnson on my team. Victor Vodnik, reliever in the minor leagues. He's 23 years old. And over the past 2 years, he's been really good. 2.93 ERA in 2022 at AAA, 3.10 ERA in 2023 at AA. That comes with a 32% strikeout rate. So he's pitching really well. This is a guy that could be pretty good. I mean, unfortunately, he has to go to Colorado, but there's definitely the possibility of having a pretty solid career there for Vodnik. And then Tanner Gordon, 25 years old, 8.28 ERA in AAA this year. It was a 4.61 at AA. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but I guess he's sort of a throw-in because Vodnik is clearly one of the top relief pitching prospects in baseball.
Yeah, Victor Vodnik is definitely a Colorado Rockies player name. It sounds like a dude that was made up, in like MLB The Show. His changeup is disgusting. I don't know if you actually watched some of the videos of him.
No.
Yeah, he has a really, really disgusting changeup. That's like his plus pitch. But yeah, other than that, I don't really know anything about Tanner Gordon. The stats do not sound very enticing, but they gave up a reliever. So, I mean, if you can get somebody back like this, in these reliever trades, if you get back anybody that helps you at all with your big league team at some point, that's most likely a win. Like if you get back any guys that can make
on a rental reliever with an ERA of almost 6, of course.
Like anybody that makes the big league roster is a win for you at that point. And then Taylor Hearn actually was on big league roster until about 2 hours ago. He got optioned to AAA.
Called it
2 hours ago. So see you in Gwinnett, bozo. And then we have some cool trades to talk about involving the Dodgers. There's a bunch of them. And we're going to start with the first one. They traded Kike Hernandez back to the Dodgers. They got relief pitcher Nick Robertson, who's unranked. into the Dodgers or in the Dodgers farm system. He is the number 30 prospect in Boston's system, and then they got another relief pitcher prospect, Justin Hagenman. Don't know anything about either of those guys.
No, well, we will learn about them soon, but we'll start with Kike Hernandez. He is having the worst year of his career by a long shot. He's fallen off tremendously defensively, and that's mostly because the Red Sox have found it fit to make him their everyday shortstop, basically, because Adalberto Mondesi and Trevor Story have been injured the entire season. And I don't think at 31, Kike, who's been mostly an outfielder and second baseman, is the best fit for the 6-hole, but that's where he's been, and it's not been great. Defensively, it's been equally as bad offensively as well. He's batting .228. He's got a 63 WRC plus. He's got just 6 home runs and 3 steals. It's really not been great. Luckily, the Dodgers don't really have to rely on him the same way that the Red Sox did. They're not going to throw him in at shortstop. They're going to be able to use him more as a utility guy like he had been in the past for the Dodgers. He's a guy, like I said, can play second base, probably shouldn't play shortstop, but will likely fill in the outfield as well. But the fact that they don't really have to rely on him to be like a key member of their team offensively or defensively is probably good. But negative 1.3 F4 so far this season. Not great.
Not great. Kike Hernandez is one of baseball's penultimate like vibe guys. I feel like he's like one of the best pure vibes players. Do you sort of get the same thing from him?
I don't know. He told that story about when he shit his pants. So now I like him.
Fair. I don't know if you saw the video of him linking back up with the Dodgers dugout the first time.
Yeah.
And he was like the video of him like torquing in the dugout.
Oh,
like,
no, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
one.
that was cool.
He was like going to talk to reporters, and he just like sees one of the ones that he knows, and the guy's like, "Hey, like I'm whatever," and he's just like, "Oh, hi, no speak English."
Yeah, in case you didn't know, Kike Hernandez speaks perfect English.
Yeah, he does.
But yeah, I don't know. I like Kike. It's a shame that he has to go play for the Dodgers again. But tell us about some of these relievers. You are, in case you didn't know, Jake is a reliever guy. He does a bunch of reliever work for all sorts of websites. And
that is true. That is true. And Nick Robertson is actually somebody that's interested me this year. He's a 24-year-old right-handed reliever. He's 6'6". He's a big guy, but he's been really great in the Dodgers minor leagues at AAA, 2.54 ERA, and he's striking out 37.5% of the batters he faces. I can pull up his other pages so I can see what kind of pitches he's got. An ERA over 6, but the xFIP and FIP suggests that that's been pretty unlucky. But yeah, this is a guy that I think could immediately enter into that Red Sox bullpen. I know he's at AAA right now, but this is a guy that could be up on the team. He throws a 4-seamer and a changeup and an occasional slider. None of them are really like special, but I mean, changeup can be a field pitch, and obviously he's had success with it in the minor leagues. But this is a guy that could contribute to a team that is pretty much in the playoff hunt right now. So that's sort of the move that the Red Sox are making right now. They still want to stay competitive while selling a guy on a expiring contract where he's struggled for them. So that it's good to get Nick Robertson, who's lands on their top 30 prospects as well. And then Justin Hagenman, 6'3", relief pitcher for the Dodgers. He's 26 years old, 2.78 ERA at AAA this year, 27% strikeout rate. Seems pretty solid. He is pretty old for a guy to be in AAA at this point without making his major league debut, but you never know with guys like this, especially with relievers. So he'll probably be up at some point in his major league career, and then we'll be able to determine if he's going to be any good. But I have a lot of faith in Nick Robertson actually contributing to this bullpen this year and actually being good in the future.
Yeah, I like this trade a lot after looking at both of these guys a little bit more, because you're getting rid of Kike Hernandez, who this season for you has been really a net negative. He's been flat out a terrible baseball player. You're getting two guys that realistically you have a lot of control of as relievers, so you can have pretty cost-controlled bullpen depth there. That's good. Both of these guys are in AAA. Hagenman is on the older side, 26, like you said, but I feel like both of these guys could be in his bullpen by the end of the year. Their bullpen hasn't been great outside of like Kenley Jansen, and like Winkowski's been like fine. Pivetta obviously is an outlier because he's not really a reliever. He's a like a swing man, long reliever. But yeah, I like this move for them. I like this move a lot less for the Dodgers, who sort of bought what right now seems to be a defective baseball player, and we'll see a trend. We'll see a trend as things go
That's
on.
right.
But before we do that, we can also talk about another Red Sox trade. I will let you pronounce this guy's name because I do not know how to.
Yeah, it's Mauricio Lovera. He pitched for the Giants. He's just like a solid guy. He's pretty young for a guy that's been in the majors for 4 straight seasons now. He's only 27. He was acquired from the Phillies in 2022. I don't know how he landed here. It was probably a DFA and a claim, but he's pretty solid. He doesn't have anything super special. He's a big slider guy. He throws a slider that's not loved by many metrics. 16% CSW is not great, but he does throw 96 miles per hour with his sinker. So I think he's got a little bit of potential, but I think he's more of like a front end of the bullpen guy that you sort of use as depth. He comes up and down through the minors like he has been for the Giants, but the Giants got Marquise Johnson in return. He's at single A right now. He's 23 years old. He's in his age 22 season, but he's a starter, 6'2". Actually, he's a reliever. Excuse me. He's not been great in the minors. 6.55 ERA, but he does strike out a decent amount of guys. 28%. This is a guy. I mean, being at A ball as a 23-year-old, we probably won't see him until much later, and he's probably going to fill like the same role as Lovera, where he is like an up and down front end of the bullpen guy that is more there for depth.
Yeah, still a decent trade for the Sox. It was like a waiver claim trade, so getting rid of a guy that they'll probably never have like make a real impact for their team for some depth also makes a little bit of sense. Red Sox pretty clear plan so far is to stockpile some depth for their bullpen, and then the next trade we'll talk about is going to stick in the AL East, and it's going to be the Blue Jays trading Trent Thornton to the Mariners in exchange for shortstop prospect Mason McCoy.
Yeah, Trent Thornton, he's cool. He wears glasses when he pitches. He's had some success in the majors. He's more of just like I don't know. He was a swing man for a while. He's become more of a traditional reliever recently, and I think he's pretty solid. He's 29. He's still got a couple of years of control left. He won't be a free agent until after 2025. But I mean, nothing crazy here. The Mariners, though, are like just sickos when it comes to turning relievers into relief aces, and maybe that's possible with Thornton. I don't really see anything in his profile that suggests there's anything to uncover really, but you never know with the Mariners. They always get guys out of nowhere. He's actually a big like ground ball guy. He throws a lot of strikes and he gets a lot of weak contact. So maybe there's something there if they can help him strike some more batters out. But I don't know. He's sort of an unknown commodity right now for a Mariners team that likely won't make the playoffs. Mason McCoy is somewhat interesting, but I think he's going to be more of like a depth, a utility guy. He's already 28 years old and is yet to make his major league debut, but he has had success in the minors. 2022 at AAA, 21 home runs, 22 steals. Unfortunately, he strikes out a lot. So he batted like 256, and the strikeouts have gotten worse this year at the age of 28. So that's why I say he's more of like a depth guy, despite being like a 2020 guy in the minors. He's going to come up and probably be more of like a 5-5 guy in the majors that strikes out a bit too much. I think the comp that I have in my brain is like Dylan Moore, but slower.
I had one, and I'm drawing a blank for a name.
What team?
You know who he reminds me of, Jake?
Who?
Zach Short.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Short.
Tigers. Yeah.
He's a guy.
Good
He's
analysis.
A dude that plays baseball.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, this is the main reason they made this trade was the main reason they made this trade was because they DFA'd Trent Thornton after they acquired this man. They acquired Genesis Cabrera from the Cardinals in exchange for catching prospect Samuel Hernandez. So when they got Cabrera, they had to DFA him, make room. Trent Thornton, then they get Mason McCoy. They acquired Genesis Cabrera as the Cardinals prepare to strip down everything on their terrible baseball team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Cabrera's a guy with a ton of potential because he's only 26 still, and he is one of the hardest throwing left-handers in baseball. He averages 96 with his heater. Unfortunately, he cannot throw strikes. He was doing the whole Jose Alvarado thing at the beginning of the year where like for the first month of the season, he didn't walk anybody. And it was like, how is this guy going from a 12% career walk rate to 0%? And then it all fell apart and he just started walking as many guys as he struck out and it started to make more sense again. But there is that in there. If they can help him throw strikes, this is a guy that I think could be a super dominant reliever because he throws so hard from the left side. And the Blue Jays don't really have a ton of lefty relievers anyway. They're mostly relying on Tim Meza. And I think this is a guy that could really help out that team in the future. He's on the roster right now. They didn't DFA him or anything. So with Jordan Romano going on the IL, he might actually be somebody that they rely on, but we'll see. It really all depends on him throwing strikes. And then Samuel Hernandez, I am definitely looking at the wrong guy. I'm looking at a 38-year-old. There's no way.
He hit a home run in his debut game. Catching prospect.
Samuel, I can't even find him on Baseball Reference or on Fangraphs. They're pulling up Samuel Hernandez, a 38-year-old second baseman.
They traded this guy for a guy that's never ever played baseball ever.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. That's really weird.
Hold on.
Fangraphs is usually good at that. I actually want to know now that this is such like a small deal.
Search Sammy Hernandez. They call him, his name is Samuel Hernandez, but they call him Sammy. He is basically in rookie ball. He's come up to A ball this season. He strikes out a lot. He's in A ball as a 19-year-old, though, to be fair. He posted a 192 average, 51 WRC plus, decent catching prospect. Genesis Cabrera, though, I like this move a lot for the Blue Jays. I think he could be pretty dominant in their bullpen, like you said. Yeah. Potentially, I don't know, trusted with high leverage, but as a big lefty in their pen. I really do not trust the St. Louis Cardinals as a pitching development organization. They're one of the worst in baseball, I feel. They really don't develop their own starters that well anymore, which is weird because they develop position players extremely well, and their pitching development has not been there. Genesis Cabrera, the Blue Jays hopefully can figure it out with him so he can at least be, a little better than walking as many guys as he's striking out, because that's not great. But yeah, this is a pretty mid move, I guess. It's adding bullpen depth to a team that sort of needs it, especially now because the Blue Jays have been dealing with a little bit of injuries in their pen. I know Romano hit the IL today, so we'll see where they go with that. Talking about reliever depth and some trades, the Marlins and Twins made one of the weirder trades that I thought. They swapped relievers Dylan Floro and Jorge Lopez. It's the only trade, nothing else added. They just traded Dylan Floro straight up for Jorge Lopez.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I don't know that I wouldn't say they're similar guys. I think Jorge Lopez has a higher ceiling than Floro. Lopez seemed to find something with the Orioles in the first half last year, but they shipped him to Minnesota and he completely fell apart. 4.37 ERA in the second half, 5.09 ERA this year in 35 and a third innings. I know he was struggling with some mental health stuff too. I think it was probably like a little bit of the yips, but I don't know. Yeah, this is a guy that right now he's got a much lower floor than Floro, but he does have the ability to reach higher highs, as we saw in the first half of last year. He's got a higher strikeout potential. And Floro is a guy that, while he probably doesn't have a super high ceiling, he's got a very solid floor, and especially for the second half, 4.50 ERA on the season, but it comes with a 3.10 xFIP, which suggests not only 4.50 ERA, sort of solid, but that he's going to be a lot better in the second half, but he's probably not going to be a team's closer right now, but it definitely works as depth for the Twins that really could use some depth. And then Jorge Lopez goes to a bullpen that's getting pretty loaded in Miami, as we'll talk about later.
Definitely. And this trade for me seems a little bit worse for the Twins because they get Floro, obviously, but you have to remember just last season, they traded for Jorge Lopez and they traded up some guys. They traded Juan Nunez, Kay Povich, Juan Rojas, and
Povich, wow.
Yeah, they also traded Yennier Cano. Yennier Cano is part of that trade. Rory Lopez. So now you effectively traded all of those guys for Dylan Floro. And I don't know if that's exactly what you want to be doing.
And Lopez has another year of control over Floro also.
So now you have a rental reliever. You got rid of Jorge Lopez, and you gave up all those guys to get Jorge Lopez. I hate this trade for Minnesota. This trade's whatever for Marlins. I like their bullpen. Marlins bullpen is really good, which like you said, we'll talk about in a little bit. But this next trade is another example of the Dodgers going dumpster diving. This trade deadline, because they traded with the Cleveland Guardians for Ahmed Rosario. So they have acquired Ahmed Rosario, shortstop from the Cleveland Guardians, in exchange for Noah Syndergaard. So.
Mm-hmm.
Another straight up big leaguer for big leaguer trade. There's been a couple of these, and I feel like this doesn't happen that much, but it's sort of been on the rise the last few years trade deadlines. But Noah Syndergaard goes in exchange for Ahmed Rosario, and this is a trade. I don't know how. I feel like this is one where both teams lost, and I don't understand how. Because Syndergaard sucks, and Ahmed Rosario can't hit, and he can't field. So, what's the point of this trade? Dodgers are content to sign all the. I don't know. Maybe the Dodgers are tanking because they're Med Rosario.
I'd love that,
good, but he'll put up 3 F4 in the second half now, just to spite us, which is going to be really cool. And then I don't know. I saw one, and it was I saw a picture. I wish I had sent it for the group chat, and it was a picture of the. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's the It's like the record player that has the sign on it that says "does not work but could be fun to fix."
Yeah,
it was both of those in a mirror. Both of them trading Ahmed Rosario for Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah, I think Dodgers' goal this trade season is to just buy low on guys, and hopefully they can use their. I think they're getting pretty inflated mentally, where they're just hey. We can do anything. We turned Jason Hayward into a legit major leaguer. We can do anything.
Yeah.
Give us all your worst players and we'll get him back to normal. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it with Ahmed Rosario. He's not been hitting this year. 87 WRC plus, no power, batting just 267 with a little bit of speed. And he is an awful fielder. I know they've tried him in the outfield before, and he is somehow worse in left field than he is at shortstop. But he's not great at shortstop either. The Dodgers will probably use him in a bench/platoon role as well, so they don't really have to rely on him. But, if he does reach the heights that he was at last year, where he was like a 2.5 WAR guy, 103 WRC plus, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, can be pretty solid. But I don't think he's going to be really anything special. But you never know with the Dodgers. They could just take a guy like that and just turn him into something crazy. And then, I think the reason teams are doing these major league for major leaguer swap is because we have so many wild card spots now, and especially for the Guardians, who are still in the running for that division in the AL Central. Both teams are trying to compete while giving up something for something else. The Guardians get a little bit of cash, so maybe that's the ultimate goal here, is to trade Rosario for cash and then not get totally screwed in terms of major league talent. But Syndergaard is not somebody that I want on my team. He was all right last year, 3.94 ERA, but he's forgotten completely how to strike guys out. And this year he's been terrible, 7.16 ERA. Not a guy that you really want to rely on. The Guardians are great at pitching development, so maybe they see something that they could do with Syndergaard, and they found a way to get him really cheap. But I don't think Syndergaard wants to be in Cleveland. Did you see he tweeted and then deleted it?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
I think he said something about I'd rather be on the Angels or something.
He did say that, and he prefaced it with the F word before that. So that's cool. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of guy you want.
Clearly doesn't want to be pitching for Cleveland. Yeah, and he's not a great pitcher anymore. He's been dealing with injuries this year too. Guardians, I don't know, don't really have to rely on him, but that's somebody where it'll be interesting to see if the Guardians can do anything with him. But I really don't have high hopes. It does seem like a lose-lose on both sides.
Yeah, he's actually been on the injured list anyway, so they traded for him while he was hurt. There's a cool little bit of history to talk about with Noah Syndergaard and regarding Shohei Ohtani, because Shohei Ohtani had the complete game shutout and the home run. Noah Syndergaard is actually the last pitcher before Shohei Ohtani to do that. He was the last one to throw a complete game shutout and hit a home run the same day. So that's cool. But I don't know. I like this trade more for the Dodgers side. Because Noah Syndergaard was not good. He was just flat out terrible. Ahmed Rosario does have his pluses. He's very good against lefties. He's been really good against lefties this season. He's got he doesn't walk. That's the one real flaw to Ahmed Rosario's game right here. If you're going to use him as a bench bat, he never walks.
Yeah.
He's got a 345 on base percentage, and a 127 WRC plus, and he's hitting over 300 just against lefties, which is good. I feel like if they want to use him just in that sort of role, the Dodgers are good at having guys like that. So, there you go. They have some sort of use for Ahmed Rosario. Just please don't ask him to play defense at all ever because he's very bad at it. Noah Syndergaard.
Can you imagine a guy like that as DH?
Oh, God.
Like you're just super fast and you're just like, you're just so bad.
Here's a guy.
Yeah. You just got like the Adam Dunns. Everybody else got Adam Dunn at DH. The Dodgers got Ahmed Rosario.
Yeah, he'll post 3 F4 as DH just to spite us now because we said that.
That's right.
Which is really irritating. But yeah, he's I don't know. He was good last year. Not so much this year. Noah Syndergaard also. He's just not been good for a long time. I feel like there's not really much hope in getting anything out of Syndergaard at this point. I like the Guardians pitching development and their pitching coaches a lot. I think they're a great organization for that. I just feel like this is a lost cause, and you're just getting a guy for the sake of getting a guy. I would rather have gotten literally anybody else than Noah Syndergaard. I feel like he makes your baseball team worse. So not really a big fan of that move on Cleveland's end. But they got some cash considerations. They got some dollary dues for their troubles.
One of the top prospects in baseball.
Definitely. And then here's the big one. The White Sox traded Lucas Giolito and reliever Reynaldo Lopez to the Los Angeles Angels, answering all of our questions on what the Angels are going to do, if they're going to buy or sell. They're going to buy. The White Sox received catching prospect Edgar Quero. He was the number 2 prospect in the Angels system. He's going to stay in the same spot. Number 2 prospect for the White Sox, 65 prospect in all of baseball. And they also got the Angels number 3 prospect, Kai Bush, starting pitching prospect. He's the number 6 prospect for the White Sox. I like this trade a lot. It's good to see the Angels actually trying to do something while they have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. It's good. I know we were all sort of excited to see, where's Shohei going to get traded? Where's Shohei going to get traded? We're not going to find out now because it's not going to happen. So we'll get to see what the Angels are going to do to continue to make their baseball team better if they do so. And now we'll hopefully get to see the Angels play some meaningful baseball come October.
Yeah, and this seems like a win-win for both sides. White Sox really needed to sell. Both of these guys were free agents, and they got a pretty good prospect return. But I think at this point, Angels got to go all in. I mean, if they don't re-sign Shohei after this year, they're going to be so bad for the next 6 years. It's going to be crazy. But nonetheless, right now they get one of the most solid pitchers in baseball, in my opinion, which is cool. Because I love Giolito. I think he's a great guy. He's got the worst underlying metrics of his career, coming after a year in which he was super unlucky, pitching to a 4.90 ERA last year. This year he's at 3.85, but the xFIPs have sort of switched in that regard. But I think he's still very solid. This is one of the best pitchers out there on the market. And I think this might be the biggest deal we've had thus far of the trade season. I know the one that happened today was pretty massive, but I think this one for both sides, where we're getting big prospects being dealt, big stars going both ways, and pretty interesting. Giolito in his first start for the Angels, 5 1/3 innings, 3 earned, 5 Ks. He got the loss, unfortunately, didn't get enough run support, but he's definitely exactly what the Angels need. They just always need pitching, and hopefully that can keep them afloat until Trout returns, and then they can make that September run that they're hoping to make. But their rotation is actually pretty deep now with Giolito there. Shohei, Giolito, Reed Detmers, Tyler Anderson, Griffin Canning, and Patrick Sandoval. That's 6 starters that you can all count on pretty well. So I think that's a great return. And Reynaldo Lopez, I was hyped on this guy in the offseason. I don't know if you remember. I was like, this is going to be the closer. And then he came in on opening day and was throwing 100 miles per hour. I nearly lost my mind, pooped my pants. It was crazy what he was doing. I was so pumped by that. And then unfortunately, that's made him a worse pitcher. He goes to drive line, throws harder, gets a better slider, and he's a worse pitcher now. I think it's because he's walking a lot more guys. He's lost a lot of his control. He was a 4% walk guy last year, up to 12% now. While the strikeout rate has jumped 5%, it's not been enough to offset the walks. So this is a guy that I think is going to be a very solid add to that bullpen, but not one where it's I'm worried that he's going to take over that closer role from Estevez. But if he does live up to what I sort of expected from him, there is a possibility that Estevez starts pitching towards his underlying metrics, starts to fall off in the second half, and maybe Raylo takes that closer role with ahead of Matt Moore because he's got the handedness advantage.
Definitely. I like that move a lot. And some fun trivia about this. This is the second time that Reynaldo Lopez and Lucas Giolito have both been traded. It's the second time that they've both been traded together. And that was from the Nationals in the Adam Eaton deal. The prospects that the White Sox got back are pretty interesting. They got Edgar Quero, who's one of the youngest players in AA. He's 19 years old, and he is a switch hitting catching prospect. Pretty good hitter. I don't know much about his defense, but this move made a lot of sense too. He was the number 2 prospect for the Angels. But if you know the Angels farm system, their number 1 prospect is Logan O'Hoppe, who unfortunately got injured at the start of the season. So their top prospect, their top prospect is their catcher of the future. Edgar Quero's not going to play. You might as well get the most out of him right now. It kind of sucks that you're using your 2 and 3 prospect in a rental deal like this. But I don't think it's that much of an overpay, even though it is an overpay. It's not that bad. Edgar Quero, I like him a lot. Kai Busch, not so much. He actually got really banged up in his debut. He went 3 innings. He got 10 hits, 6 earned, a walk. Didn't strike anybody out, and he hit 2 batters. So I don't really know.
That was today?
Yes, it was. Did not do great. So
yeah,
I don't know. He doesn't throw a lot of strikes. He's a left-handed pitcher, but he's 23, and hopefully he can be pretty good. I don't know. I think Edgar Quero is a huge get. I'm not sold on Kai Busch, but I think the White Sox would be happy with this. He sort of fits the timeline as well with their other top prospects. He's 19. I think he'll be 20 by the end of this season. Their top prospects like Colson Montgomery. They have a couple other guys that should be up in like 2 to 3 years, which if you're a White Sox fan, you can be excited for that, I guess, because there's nothing else to be excited about with your miserable baseball team and your terrible ownership. But yeah, Edgar Quero is good. Kai Busch could be good, but really was not tonight. But baseball is a game of peaks and valleys. He could just got shelled first game. Never know. Could come back from this, never look back. So I like this move a lot for both sides. Like you said, this is probably the biggest win-win trade of the deadline so far.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. Quero, 20 years old at AA, walks more than he strikes out, which is nice to see. But I mean, AA seems close. I think he's still pretty far away, even though he's already 20 at AA. Catchers take a while to develop, and to take over that catcher role is pretty difficult. I think this is more of like a 2025 play for Quero, which is fine. I think that fits the White Sox plan for contention. And I think he's got pretty high ceiling, but there's definitely like a low floor. Catchers can really fizzle out once you hit the higher levels. And then Kai Busch was better before this year, and that's sort of why he rose up those ranks, because he's really struggled this year. I think he was dealing with injuries at the beginning of the year because he hasn't pitched much, but the way that he's been pitching recently hints at a guy that's going to be a reliever, just not enough control to stick in the rotation. But he is 6'6", 23-year-old lefty. That sounds like a guy that could be a pretty solid back end reliever.
Definitely. I'm happy with this trade if I'm the White Sox. I think the guys that got back pretty solid. So can move on to stay in the Central, just on the NL side. And it's an interdivisional trade. The Pirates traded Carlos Santana to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for shortstop prospect Johnny Severino.
Yep, I love Carlos Santana. This has been one of my favorite players for a long time. He is like the OG, walks more than he strikes out. Nobody really cares about him, but I love him because of that. He won me multiple fantasy championships because of that ability. I loved when he was a catcher. Just does everything well. He's 37 and he's still a very solid batter. He's like a league average guy. He's been that for the last 4 years, but before that, he was just a great hitter. And they're not really going to be counting on him too much in Milwaukee right now. They've got him projected to be like a bench guy, and they've some reason been playing Abraham Toro at first, but they played Santana, batted him third today. So maybe that is more of an indication. They gave him a rest the first day that he was there, and then they're like, all right, you're going to be a number 3 hitter. So maybe they are going to count on him, but we'll see what happens when Rowdy Tellez returns. But yeah, I love Carlos Santana. I think great addition in terms of like leadership, clubhouse guy. And also I think he's just a very solid hitter. He's probably going to be pretty good for some of the young guys there too. So I love the addition. They don't give up much. Johnny Severino, 18 years old, lots of projectability because of the age, but he's an infielder, third base, shortstop guy. He's in rookie ball right now, so nothing you can really take from his numbers. But this is a guy that could be like a power hitting shortstop. We'll see though. This guy's like at least 5 years away from hitting the majors.
He could be a power hitting shortstop or corner infielder because he hit a home run in his debut tonight, also with the rookie ball affiliate of the Pirates. So that's good. I do really like Carlos Santana. This seems like a yearly sort of thing. I know I made the joke in our little group chat, but this feels like a yearly thing where the Brewers just add a first base DH type because they just don't have those. It's been like year after year, like Vogelbach, Rowdy Tellez, etc. And now Carlos Santana, which sort of sucks because I really like Carlos Santana, really don't like the Brewers. So that'll be a tough one for me. But yeah, I like this trade a lot just because I really like Carlos Santana. Severino, not in the top 30, but he was pretty highly regarded. He got like a $1.2 million signing bonus. He was the top international signing for the Brewers last year. So they thought pretty highly of him, even though he wasn't in their top 30. So this is a pretty solid trade. He's a little lottery ticket for a guy that the Pirates, they at this point, they don't have any use for him. He's a rental. They're going to get what they're going to get for him. Potential high ceiling guy. We'll see. And then the Mets continued their teardown because, God, they've just been bad. They traded David Robertson to the Miami Marlins in exchange for infielder Marco Vargas. He's the number 18th prospect in the Marlins system. He becomes the number 6 prospect in the Mets system that has sort of been depleted over the years. They also required Ronald Hernandez, who was the number 21 prospect with Miami. He jumps up to number 17 for the Mets.
I think this is a big win for the Mets. I mean, to sell high on David Robertson, who's 38 years old, he's about to be a free agent. The Mets aren't looking to compete for the rest of the year. They're definitely in teardown mode right now and looking to compete next season. And while Vargas and Hernandez are both really young guys, I think these are pretty big prospects, and they've had big seasons this year that have sort of bumped them up the prospect radar, mostly for Vargas, which I think for MLB Pipeline, when they trade when prospects move teams, I think it does give the rankers an opportunity to re-rank them because they won't just, they only update the list like 3 times a year, like right before the season, after the season, and in the middle of the season after the deadline. So that's the only way you'll move when you stay on your same team in terms of rankings. But when you move teams, that allows them to they're not going based off what did I think about him back when I ranked him originally prior to the season starting. They're like, what do I rank him now? Like, where do I see him now? And I think Vargas is ranking jumping from 18 to 6 in the Mets organization, not only, like you said, talks about how shallow the Mets system is, but also indicates that Vargas has been rising in terms of how prospect evaluators see him. He's 18 years old. He's shown great plate discipline in rookie ball this year. He's an infielder. He can play second base, third base, shortstop. And I think the prospect evaluators are really big on him. Like I said, 18 rookie ball is a guy that's more than a few years away. But I think this is one of the guys that like sneakily becomes like a top 50 prospect in baseball in like 3 or 4 years. And then like Marlins fans are like, dang, like, why did we do that? We got David Robertson, made the playoffs, but we didn't really go anywhere with him. And I think Vargas is definitely a really great get here.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty big overpay for the Marlins. I feel like this trade is really fun also because the 2 guys that the Marlins traded are younger combined than David Robertson is.
It's crazy. Hernandez is 19.
Yeah, and Vargas just turned 18 this year. Vargas's bat to ball skill is really good. He's also walked. If you have not looked at his Fangraphs page, he has walked almost twice as much as he struck out. It's like 23 and a half to like 13% strikeout percentage. He's really good. He's a smaller frame player, lefty swing, really nice lefty swing too. There's a couple videos flying around of that. This is a pretty big overpay, and I think the Mets really won this trade. They're not. David Robertson's a rental. He's 38. They don't really have any use for him potentially after this season. They're not going anywhere, and they managed to get 2 guys that crack their top 30 for a rental reliever, which is ridiculous when you're seeing some of these other trades and guys that aren't making teams top 30s for potentially better like rentals or rentals of the same caliber. This is a huge trade for the Mets, and I would be pretty thrilled if I were them. Marco Vargas really has a lot of potential. Ronald Hernandez, I'm a little less familiar with, but Marco Vargas, this is a huge get for them.
Yeah, and then for the Marlins, I mean, we're talking a lot about the prospects they gave up, but David Robertson's still very good reliever,
Mhm.
2.05 ERA this year, 14 saves, got 28% strikeout rate. And that Marlins bullpen, we talked about them getting Jorge Lopez. That bullpen is getting pretty loaded because AJ Puck's been the closer there all year. And while he's fallen off a little in the second half, it's been a lot of bad luck there. So if you put David Robertson into the closer role, it just makes everybody move down a notch and just makes it super deep because AJ Puck, I think he's pretty solid. Tanner Scott's got some of the best numbers of the past
Mhm.
2 months plus in all of baseball in terms of relievers. And the rest of that bullpen is also really solid. They got tons of lefties. Andrew Nardi, Stephen Okert are both very solid. JT Chargois has been pretty underrated as well. And then if Jorge Lopez can do what he's done in the past and Huáscar Brazoban and George Soriano can do what they've been doing this year, that's a loaded bullpen, like from top to bottom. And that's exactly what you like to see going into the playoffs. The Marlins now need to go get a big bat, and then I'll feel pretty confident about their trade deadline acquisitions.
Yeah, the Marlins could be a really sneaky team, especially if they make it into playoffs. Like teams like this typically take other teams by surprise. The Marlins starting pitching is good. Like
Yep.
Sandy has been down this season, but we all know how good he can be. Braxton
Yep.
Garrett's been pretty up and down also, but the rest of their rotation is pretty steady. Like Johnny Cueto is good. They have a lot of guys that are good in their team. Their lineup is the weak part, but their bullpen's crazy. And you can see teams that will go like this. The Rays did it a few seasons ago during the COVID shortened season where their lineup wasn't like excellent or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
their starting rotation destroyed everybody and then nobody hit their bullpen at all.
Yeah.
So, and we saw in 2015, the Royals did the same thing. So teams like this could potentially make deep runs into the playoffs. It is just sort of unfortunate that you're losing one of your huge prospects to try to make this run, but they really need to add, like you said, they need big bats, probably at least one, maybe two, to try to get them over the line. But if they do that, I would really, really love their deadline. So far, we have another huge trade to talk about, and this one is I'm gonna change that because it's made me laugh. But the White Sox
What did it
traded
say?
Lancey Lynn.
Lancey?
Lancey, yeah, the White Sox have traded Lance Lynn, and Joe Kelly, Psycho Joe Kelly, to the Los Angeles Dodgers in exchange for outfielder Trace Thompson, starting pitching prospect Nick Nastrini. He was the number 9 prospect for the Dodgers. He becomes the number 4 prospect for the White Sox. And relief pitcher prospect Jordan Leisure, which is an awesome name. He was an unranked prospect. He becomes the number 26th prospect in the White Sox system.
Yeah. Couple guys going back to teams that they've been on before. Joe Kelly, former Dodger, Trace Thompson, former White Sox. But Lance Lynn, clearly the big get here. Been terrible this year. I think he's got the worst qualified ERA, 6.47. Not been great for the White Sox, but he's really been underperforming this year. 4.02 xFIP. Not great, but definitely indicates that he's been really unlucky by almost 2.5 runs, which when you think about it, doesn't mean he's going to pitch to a 4 ERA the rest of the way. I think it means he's going to start pulling himself down to that, which means he pitches below that 4 xFIP. And going to Dodgers where they're really good at making guys good. And Lance Lynn is a guy that's been good in the past. He's 36, but he's got that dog in him. And unfortunately, he's going to the Dodgers where I won't be able to root for him. But this is one of the big guys that I think was somebody that I think teams should have gone out and got, because you can buy low, you can buy really low. You don't have to hold on to him because he's 36 years old. He's got a 2024 club option. So you can hold on to him if you want, but you don't have to if he still struggles and he's old. But he's got a lot of room to improve in the second half because I think he's a really good pitcher. I think he's a guy that's been really unlucky. And this is one that I'd hoped another team would have gone and got so that I could root for him to be better in the second half. But yeah, I think Lance Lynn's going to have a pretty big second half for the Dodgers. And Joe Kelly, it's pretty much the same boat. He's got an almost 5 ERA, and that comes with a 3.08 xFIP. He's going to be really solid for the Dodgers because I think he's a really great pitcher, really underrated, 32% strikeout rate, sub 10% walk rate. I think one of the better relievers in baseball, but people wouldn't know that because his ERA is so high. And the Dodgers, I think, are going to get a lot out of him. He's probably not going to close, but this is a guy that's going to be very important to the back end of that Dodgers bullpen.
Definitely. I like Joe Kelly. Everyone knows exactly what he brings. He's a lot of energy. He's pretty big. Like he's just a huge high energy guy out of your bullpen. He's psycho Joe Kelly. Everyone knows Joe Kelly. The Dodgers desperately needed pitching depth, and they're sacrificing some positional depth from their farm system in the form of Nick Nastrini, who seems to be pretty good. He's got like a mid-nice fastball, really hard slider, pretty big changeup. But yeah, I feel bad for Trace Thompson, man, because he has to go play for the White Sox.
Yeah, that sucks. He was having a pretty solid start to the season for the Dodgers, and he was pretty good last year for them as well. He was the first guy to hit 3 home runs in a game this season, and he's fallen off since then. He's a guy that's struggled with strikeouts throughout his career. Luckily, Klay Thompson's his brother, so he doesn't really have to worry about being the moneymaker in the family. Yeah, but yeah, that sort of sucks to go to a team that's out of the playoff race, leaving a team that's squarely in it. But the rest of the return, I think, is somewhat interesting. I mean, Nick Nastrini, clearly one of the better White Sox prospects now. He's a 23-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. He's got a 4.03 ERA at Double-A this year. Strikes out a decent amount of batters, 26%. I don't know much about him, but he's got a good fastball. He's got a good curveball. And it'll really depend on how he makes that transition from Double-A to Triple-A and then to the majors to really define whether or not he's going to be a legit prospect for them.
Definitely. And Jordan Leisure has been assigned to Double-A. Two interesting things to note. Well, it's like one, but it's combined. An interesting thing to note about both of these guys that the White Sox acquired. Both of these guys were Rule 5 eligible from the White Sox or from the Dodgers. So they trade these guys now to the White Sox. So we could potentially see them up pretty soon.
Yeah, because they got to be on the 40-man next year.
They have to be on the 40-man. Jordan Leisure has been really good so far in Double-A. I know they've talked about potentially already moving him up. He strikes out so many guys. It is ridiculous. He's got a 14.4 Ks per 9 in 35 innings. He's most likely going to close games for you. He's got 56 strikeouts so far in 35 innings, which is really good. Doesn't walk a lot of guys either.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can see him fill one of those roles because the White Sox keep trading every single one of their relievers, just like this next trade where they have traded Kendall Graveman to the Astros. So he will have his second stint with the Astros, and the White Sox will receive another catching prospect, which is sort of weird. They get Corey Lee, who's the number 5 prospect for Houston. He will become the number 13 prospect for the White Sox. So White Sox getting all these pitchers. They got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
New catch.
Yeah, Graveman's, I mean, Kendall Graveman, he's just like a very solid guy. He's sort of in the opposite ERA XFIP conversation as Joe Kelly, where his XFIP is way up there and his ERA is 3.5. He's not going to be, they really don't have to rely on him in Houston. He's going to be like their 5th or 6th reliever because they've got so many great arms in that bullpen, which I think is good for Graveman. Like mentally, he was like the top guy in Chicago all year. They really had to rely on him. And while he's pitched well, clearly the underlying metrics don't agree. So in Houston, he can sort of, they don't really have to worry about him being like the guy. He can sort of just be an innings eater in the relief pitcher fashion. Corey Lee's pretty interesting. He was the 32nd overall pick in 2019 by the Astros. And he had some great years in the minors, 25 home runs, 12 steals last year at AAA. And he's still only 24, but this is a guy that strikes out a lot. He's a really athletic catcher. Like I said, 12 steals. He's got 12 steals this year at AAA. This is a guy that I think may end up in the outfield if he doesn't really work out behind the plate. But I think he's a pretty solid prospect. The bat may not work out because he strikes out a bit too much, but I think this is a guy that could be pretty solid. Just the fact that he goes from number 5 to number 13 in Chicago sort of suggests how his prospect star has fallen from a former first-round pick who was a 25-plus home run, 10-plus stolen base guy in the minors to a guy that's now not even cracking the White Sox top 10 in a pretty weak farm system.
Yeah, there's still a strong chance we could see him with the White Sox by the end of the year. The big thing for this, and the Astros really won this trade, even though it looks bad on their farm system because he's their number 5 prospect, he's never going to get real playing time because Yiner's so much better than him.
Who's Martin Maldonado?
Yeah. Yeah, that guy sucks. Like,
yeah. No, he'll be good. He'll be like a good bridge to Caro.
Yeah, like he's fine. Cool thing too, he also gets to, if he plays this season for the White Sox, he'll also get to play with his college teammate Andrew Vaughn. So there you go. They both were, I think they were both at Cal together.
Yeah.
So there you go. Corey Lee, yeah, he's sort of fallen off a little bit, but it's still a decent trade. Kendall Graveman, another rental reliever, get rid of him, get something back. Because Yasmani Grandal is clearly not the future catcher for your franchise forever. That
No, he's likely to get traded also.
Yeah. He's also old as the Hills. So not bad. Another one, last major trade that we have to talk about, as long as something crazy does not happen while we're talking about it. I saw a thing, a Twitter notification. It's still Twitter. It's not X, whatever. That said John Mozeliak from the Cardinals are not trading Nolan Arenado. Like gave me like a heart attack for like a second. It's like, oh yeah, unless they make more trades, and it's like John Mozeliak, something Arenado. Like, oh my god. But the last major trade just happened right before we came on. It's the New York Mets continuing their teardown. They traded Max Scherzer to the Texas Rangers in exchange for Luis Angel Acuna, who is Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother. He's the number 3 prospect with the Rangers.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more exciting trades, especially like the 1-for-1. I think both of these guys are pretty big names. Acuna more so because of his brother, but that's not to say he's not been good. He's been great this year at AA as a 21-year-old. He's batting .315. He's got 7 home runs and 42 stolen bases. He's fast AF. He doesn't strike out too much either. He's a middle infielder, not like his brother, but that's pretty interesting because he does have those genetic ties to one of the best players, the best player in the National League right now. So that's very interesting. I think his name is cooler than his brother's too. Ronald, not too many Ronalds in baseball, but Luis Angel is a very cool name. I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he could be up by next year even. The Rangers don't really have a need for a shortstop, second baseman with Semien and Seager both there. Actually, he's on the Mets now. The Mets could use him. Yeah, I mean that's a really exciting one in a big. Oh, they're going to be in the same division. Both of the Acuñas. That could be cool. Yeah, so I'm really excited for the younger Acuna and Max Scherzer. I mean, everybody knows about Max Scherzer, future Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last 10 years or so, and fallen off this year at the age of 38 in his second year in New York. Excuse me. He's 4.01 ERA. The underlying metrics sort of back that up. He's not been the same guy that he's been in years past, but that's not to say he can't figure things out and become a better pitcher in Texas. He did, I think, waive his opt-out, so he will be with the Rangers next year too, which is pretty interesting. Yeah. I know DeGrom's probably likely not to return until very end of next year, but I mean, that rotation could be pretty crazy next year. But as of now, this is a huge addition to a team that's looking to hold off the Astros in the AL West.
Yeah, and they desperately needed some rotation depth. Obviously, they lost DeGrom. Nathan Eovaldi's still not been right. He's been listed as day-to-day for like 3 weeks now. He's lost a lot of velocity, so I feel like they'll probably end up moving Eovaldi to the IL for a stint. John Gray, you already know, is injury prone, and the rest of your rotation is like Andrew Heaney and Martin Perez. So like they needed another guy to fill out that rotation, and the Rangers look like a team that could be a serious World Series contender this year. Max Scherzer has playoff experience, so hopefully you can have a guy like this maybe have a resurgence, because he flat out has not been the same Max Scherzer this year. So hopefully they can get what they really need to get out of him. He's really just been down in every single metric. And it's a shame, because Max Scherzer is obviously one of the best pitchers in baseball history. You obviously want to see him still at the peak of his powers, but that's just not the case anymore. But Luis Angel Acuna has been really good. He's 21. He's in Double-A. He's probably a year or so away still, but he's like they have him listed as a shortstop / second base prospect, but he also could play center. That'd be really cool to see both Acuñas in the outfield on opposite sides in the NL East. He's been really good. It steals a gajillion bases. He's got like 84 steals and 104 attempts, something like that. His first couple years in the minors, really good. I like this trade. The Rangers are only going to be paying like half of Scherzer's contract, and the Mets pay the other half. It's like $22.5 million is all that the Rangers are on the hook for. I don't know if I'm assuming that's for both years, like for this year and next year. But if it's kind of crazy. The Mets are basically paying to have this guy not on the team anymore. It's like where Billy Beane gave David Justice hell in Moneyball.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, the Rangers definitely going all in. Their team is getting pretty freaking stacked now. I would love to see DeGrom still with that team, but unfortunately he's injured. But I think this team is going to be one of the teams to watch out for in the postseason. This does seem to have the makings of a team that has so much hype, was super good in the first half, falls off a little bit in the second half, has a big trade deadline, then goes into the playoffs and just gets completely wiped out because they just I don't know, don't have the guys that are used to being in the playoffs. Like Scherzer's got playoff experience, everybody else not so much on that team, and they've got Aroldis Chapman, who's famous for giving up home runs in the postseason. So we'll see where the playoff experience comes into play, but as of now, they're having a pretty good trade deadline, getting Chapman and Scherzer. That one's huge.
Definitely. That's all the completed trades we have to talk about, but there's still some big name players on the market, and it's the 29th, so the deadline's in 2-3 days.
It's on August 1st, so it's on Tuesday is the deadline.
Yeah. So they have 3 days to create
and we're going live on Wednesday, so we'll have everything wrapped up.
So you have to come back and check everything for that. But there's some big name players still in the market. We'll start obviously with probably the biggest seller so far, and that's going to be the White Sox. They have 4 names that could still potentially move, and it'd be Tim Anderson. We mentioned a little bit of Yasmani Grandal, Mike Clevenger, and relief pitcher Keenan Middleton. What's the likelihood for every one of these guys getting traded? Because I think it has to be 100%.
Yeah, I mean, they're all free agents. I mean, Tim Anderson's got like a club option, same thing as Lance Lynn. So yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. Tim Anderson just hit his first home run of the season today. So
wow.
his trade value is skyrocketing.
Sky high.
I think they've all got to be on the move. I mostly put guys on this list of guys that I'm like
definitely
pretty sure they're going to get traded. Yeah.
Okay, then we can stay in the AL Central for the next 2 teams to talk about. You have listed here Michael Lorenzen. I think Michael Lorenzen is 100% getting traded. There's been reports of every single team interested in him. Like the Angels were interested in him, the Marlins were interested in him. Like something else I saw. I think there's also a decent chance that Erod could get traded.
Sure, he can opt out this year. That's why.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you're the Tigers, you kind of have to trade Erod. You're definitely going to trade Lorenzen. The Tigers are going absolutely nowhere. And then there are 2 more right here. The Royals, they're really good at baseball. They have just 2 blue chip trade chips right now: Zach Greinke and Scott Barlow. I feel like Zach Greinke would be really annoyed if he got traded.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to get traded, but he doesn't really have a say into it. I don't think he's going to get traded because he's not too great. 5.49 ERA. I don't know if many teams will be interested in really making him a key member of their rotation. And that's sort of the same for Scott Barlow. He's been good in years past, but really struggled recently. His ERA has plummeted, and so has his trade value. He's got a 5.50 ERA. He's been the closer all year, but it's a terrible team, so he's not got a lot of saves or anything. Not the ideal guy you want to trade for, but if they're really set on it, because he does have another year of control after this year, they can trade him. But because he's fallen so hard recently, I think they may just hold off because they don't have to trade him this year. They could do it in the offseason. They can do it next trade deadline. They've got time to do it. Right now doesn't really seem like a great time, but this was when the guys coming into the season, they're going to trade him for sure. We'll see. Once they traded Chapman, I thought Barlow was next out the door, but right now, not looking great for him.
Definitely. And then Oakland have there too is Tony Kemp and Trevor May. Obviously relief pitcher Trevor May, and then Tony Kemp, who was the worst hitter in baseball for the first month and a half, but has really sort of rebounded.
Fire.
Yeah, he's really good.
Which is great timing because I mean he's going to be a free agent in next year, so they don't really need to hold on to him at all. I mean, you're not going to be getting a lot for him, but since the middle of June 15th, he's batting .310. He's got 9 steals. He's got a pair of home runs. That's pretty solid. He's been leading off every day for the A's. I think he's guaranteed gone. He's going to be a bench guy for wherever he goes.
Yeah,
you're not getting a lot from him.
Those are, I don't know. Those are guys that you could get decent pieces back. Like we saw Kike Hernandez.
You get Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah, that's right. Like, well, Kike Hernandez, he's been better than Kike. So, I mean, and he got 2 decent reliever prospects.
Sure.
Anything that the A's will get for him. This is a guy that like every team will attempt to trade for because it's just a
He's
really quality utility guy. He
he's a
plays
great
like
guy
every
too.
position.
He's
Yeah,
he's
I
a
like
super
Dunning.
fun to be in the clubhouse. Yeah, and then Trevor May, guaranteed to be traded. He's about to be a free agent, but I don't know. He's been a little better recently, but he like strikes out the same amount of guys that he walks. It's been like even all year right now. 24 strikeouts, 24 walks.
Nice.
Nice. Nice.
The duality of man, Trevor May.
That's right.
And then we can say in the AL West, the Mariners, there remains to be seen if they're really going to be sellers or not. But their big trade chip is Teoscar Hernandez, who has not been that good this year, but could still net them a decent little return because he's a pretty proven bat the rest of his career. So yeah, there's Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah, that seems like one like sort of where the Guardians, where you
They'll
trade
get back
Amed
like a
Rosario.
big leaguer. Yeah,
Exactly,
I could
because
see
it's
that.
like he's about to be a free agent. He's not really doing what they really need him to do. They've got other options that they could play in the outfield, Taylor Trammell, etc. Yeah, and they could go big into the sell mode because they have other guys, Paul Sewald and other guys in the lineup. But I think Teoscar Hernandez is pretty big shot at being traded because they may get somebody that could help them for a longer period of time.
Definitely. And we can talk about our favorite baseball team, the Colorado Rockies. We're not getting through a podcast without mentioning them at least twice. Right. And they have 2 guys. They have Randall Grichuk and All-Star Game MVP Elias Diaz.
And I'll throw Jurickson Profar in there as well. He's a free agent after this year. And I think CJ Cron even too.
CJ Cron is a free agent.
Yeah, so they got a lot of guys that are free agents, but I'm pretty sure this was last year that the Rockies didn't make any moves. Maybe it was 2 years ago where they just
I think it was last year where they didn't do anything.
They didn't trade anybody. They were the only team in baseball to not make any moves. They didn't trade anybody. So Rocky's going to Rocky. They may hold on to these guys so that they can sell tickets, which, I mean, at this point, if that's all they're trying to do, then I mean, good for them. They're not going to sell. We're not going to tank our team because we want to be like great for our fans, but they got a lot of guys, Profar, Grichuk, Cron, there are a couple guys in the rotation that they could probably ship out as well. I mean, Daniel Bard too is there. Nobody too
they
crazy.
Extended him. They're not trading Daniel Bard.
That's what I was saying. They were trying to say that on the relief pitching podcast. Like, oh, what about Daniel Bard? I'm like, no, that's their favorite player. There's no way they're trading Daniel Bard. No chance. Yeah, so they got some options. Also, Elias Diaz, but I think teams are going to have to come calling because the Rockies aren't going to be advertising.
Yep, they're just hanging out, keeping all their cards close to their chests, like the Rockies do.
We may be buyers. We may be buyers.
we need to find the picture of them with their draft room where it was like 2 dudes in there with a laptop. Like that's their entire front office. The Rockies are the Rockies. I feel like if the Rockies choose to sell, they do have a lot of like really big name players that they could net huge returns for. Like CJ Cron would have to be one of the biggest rental bats on the market, if they're just agree to move him. Even Randall Grichuk, he's very quietly been really good this year. Like they've been playing him like center field, which is really stupid. Not a good idea. But on any other team where you can play him in a corner where he needs to be, he's a good hitter for you. And then Elias Diaz is having a career season, so they have a lot of guys that they could really move on. And then the Mets still have a couple guys that almost certainly are going to hit the exit door at whatever it's called now. Who cares?
Citi Field.
Yeah, that's what it is. Tommy Pham, Jake's favorite baseball player. Tommy Pham is going to probably be traded. Mark Canha and Adam Ottavino probably all up for sale with the Mets.
Yeah, some pretty solid bats. Tommy Pham, one of the better StatCast guys. Adam Ottavino, pretty solid as well. I think Brooks Raley could even be on the trade market as well. He's
Carrasco's a free agent too, right?
Yeah, but he's pretty bad. Sure, yeah. I mean, we talked about Greinke. You can throw in Carrasco. Sure. And Verlander's been on the market as well. So yeah, they've got a lot of options, guys that aren't really going to like help the team next year. I mean, Rayleigh's got a club option next year. So does Mark Canha, but they may as well like trade as many guys as they can because they are willing to spend money. So you can just go into the off season and just spend, trade, get all the guys you need for another big run at the playoffs. But yeah, they're clearly done for this year. And I think all of these rental guys are on the move.
Definitely. The Pirates have also shown that they're inclined to sell after they traded Carlos Santana. They still have Andrew
Yep.
McCutchen and Rich Hill. Both of those guys almost definitely going to leave. I know I said on last podcast I don't think McCutchen will leave, but they probably will trade him. I think he'll be another really good rental bat on the market. And then Rich Hill, even though he's 55 years old, is still rock steady. He'll probably fit on any team that really needs a swingman starter at the very least.
Yeah, they may just keep Kutch to sell tickets.
Yeah,
but I
that's
think
probably what I was thinking.
Rich Hill is gone for sure. He's not going to be any in any blockbuster trades, but I'm sure some teams will come calling. And G-Man Choi is also a free agent after this year. He just returned to the majors recently. He's got power. I mean, he's G-Man Choi, power, plate discipline, strikeouts, and fun.
Definitely. And then the San Diego Padres, they have two huge guys that could be on the move, which I think they already said some reports like they're probably not going to, but we really never know what the Padres are. We really never know what the Padres are actually going to do, though. It doesn't ever make sense what their plan is. Blake Snell and Josh Hader, if they're to be traded, they're probably the two biggest guys that are left on the market, in my opinion. So seeing that they might not move them, pretty ridiculous, because I think Hader's an impending free agent. So is Blake Snell. So both of these guys, if they're not going to actually be in the wild card chase, these guys are doing them no favors by still being on their baseball team.
Yeah, it's really goofy. They're half game ahead of the Mets, and they're just like, no, we are way more in this. And the Mets are selling guys like Scherzer, who's still like could be on the team next year. Both of these guys are free agents this year. No guarantee they resign. Even if you trade them, you can still resign them. If any team is going to make a run from this far back in the wild card, it's going to be the Padres. They are absolutely loaded, but with the way that they've been playing, underperforming the past 3 years, even, I don't see that happening. Snell could get a massive return. He's been the best pitcher in baseball for the past couple months. And Josh Hader, best reliever in the National League for the whole season, sub-1 ERA. They could get a huge return. Imagine if they shipped both of them off in the same deal or separately. I don't know which is the best way to maximize, but those are two huge names that could get tons in return. But the Padres may just be keeping hope. I think these next couple of days may be the deciding factor in whether or not they go for it. They're winning today 4-0. They won yesterday 7-1. A couple days before that, they lost to the Pirates. So if they blow their lead today and then they lose Sunday and Monday, then maybe Tuesday is the day that they sell. But if they win, I think today, tomorrow, and maybe lose on Monday, I think they're still in it. I think they're just going to go for it, which may hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with that. Then another team that is almost guaranteed to sell all of these players, St. Louis Cardinals. They've been probably the biggest disappointment from everyone's expectations at the start of this season. They're 46-59, and they have 4 players that you could expect to be traded. Paul DeYoung, I think they've already basically it's almost confirmed he's leaving. Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, and Jordan Hicks, all those guys. Pretty sure they're all impending free agents. I think does Montgomery have an option or something?
No, Montgomery's a free agent. DeJong has an option.
Oh, he sucks. So
club option for 2024 and 2025. But yeah, that seems like something that they would not exercise. In the offseason. So he's probably going to be a free agent anyway. But yeah, a couple big pitchers, a few big pitchers with Jordan Hicks in there too. I think those guys are going to be the most appealing for teams looking for guys. And there's a possibility some of their young outfield gets traded so that they can get some young pitching. Alec Burleson, I know, has been bandied about. And I know Nolan Arenado's off the board now too. But yeah, there's some interesting guys here. I could definitely see the Cardinals doing something weird and being like, no, we're going to extend all these guys. We're not going to trade. We're only going to trade one of them. And then it's like they only trade Jordan Montgomery. They're like, we love Jack Flaherty. And then, but we'll see. I think they could get some pretty good returns for these guys. But yeah, running out of time.
Yeah, it really is. We have one more team that is almost like a guaranteed seller, and it's the Washington Nationals. They have Jeimer Candelario, who could be this trade deadline's Brandon Drury from last year. And they have relief pitcher Kyle Finnegan, who is their closer. Both of those guys almost guaranteed to leave. Jeimer Candelario has been huge for the Nationals because he was a reclamation project. They signed him to a 1-year deal because nobody else wanted him, and they're going to get a big return from him. He's almost guaranteed to leave.
Yeah, that's I think that's one of the more solid bats that's guaranteed to be traded at the deadline. So that's somebody I'm excited to see where he ends up. And Cal Finnegan, it's been pretty underrated since a really slow start to the year sort of changed the perception of like how good he actually is. I think he's been very solid throughout the year. He's been the closer recently with Hunter Harvey on the IL. He's still got a couple years of control left, so there's no guarantee he's traded.
Yeah. Before we get to the last segment of our podcast, I feel like it's been a really interesting trade deadline, and I think this goes to show you that the extra wildcard spots really have changed the landscape of baseball, because now you can look at this. The teams that we listed, Washington, St. Louis, Padres, Pittsburgh, the Mets, the Mariners, Rockies, Oakland, the Royals, the White Sox, and the Tigers. Not even all of those teams are guaranteed sellers. Not all of them. Like the Padres could very easily just decide they're just not gonna fucking sell. There's a bunch of teams like the Mariners. They're 53-50. They're relatively close to a wild card spot. They're not far behind the Angels. Like they could just as easily buy as they could sell. And I think it's changed how baseball looks with this to see that there's only like what, I don't know, count them off. How many like the White Sox, the Tigers, the Royals, Oakland. I don't even know if you would include the Rockies because they're as dumb as a rock. The Mets,
dumb as the Rockies.
Yeah, the Mets, the Pirates, the Cardinals, and the Nationals. There's like 8 teams that you could maybe market. 9 teams that you could guaranteed say are sellers. And then you're seeing some of the returns, like the Marlins trade for David Robertson, where they're getting Marco Vargas, who's a really good prospect for a rental reliever. Like same thing with Edgar Quero and Kai Busch going back for Lucas Giolito. It's 2 and 3 prospect for 2 rentals. Yeah. It's majorly a seller's market, and it's kind of cool to see, but also weird because now we don't really know what the trade deadline is going to look like. It used to be like trade coming after like one after the other, really thick and fast, and now it's like, okay, here's a couple. But it's going to be interesting to see the next couple of days just exactly what happens with this. But on that note, since we have no more trades as of right now to talk about, we can end our podcast by bringing in the closer.
That's right. And I tried to go for the 69th guy on the top saves leaderboard. We've used both of them.
Really? Who were they?
They were Brian Harvey and Kevin Gregg. And so then I said, all right, what about a guy with 69 career saves? There's only one, and it's David Aardsma. He had a 9-year career from 2004 to 2015, during which he pitched for the Giants, the Cubs, the White Sox, the Red Sox, the Mariners, the Yankees, the Mets, and the Braves. He was drafted by the Giants in the first round, 22nd overall of the 2003 draft. He was nicknamed the DA because those are his initials. He debuted in April of 2004 versus the Astros. He tossed 2 scoreless innings, allowing 3 hits and a walk. He didn't strike out anybody, but he earned the win. He skipped AA and AAA to pitch in the majors that year, which is pretty wild, but he struggled to a 6.75 ERA while being called up and sent down to AAA 6 times that year. And then he started the next year in AA. It was a really weird way to go around. And then in May of 2005, 2 years or the year after he was debuted with the Giants, he was traded to the north side of Chicago for LaTroy Hawkins, and then he didn't pitch for the Cubs until 2006, and he was solid, if not unspectacular for the Cubs, with a 4.08 ERA and 0.6 baseball reference WAR. Prior to the 2007 season, the Cubs traded Aardsma to the south side of Chicago for Neil Kotz. He wasn't great there with a 6.40 ERA across the 32 1/3 innings pitched. And then during the offseason between the 07 and 08 season, Aardsma changed socks via trade. He had landed in Boston, and he was still unable to find success there, pitching to a 5.55 ERA across 48 2/3 innings pitched. And then Aardsma was traded one last time prior to the 2009 season, and he landed with the Mariners. And Seattle is where he finally figured things out at the age of 27. He became the closer in his first year there, and that would be the best season of his career. In 2009, he tossed a career high 71 and a third innings. He struck out a career high 80 batters. He had a career best 2.52 ERA. He had a career best 1.16 whip, and he had a career high 38 saves. It was a huge season for Ardsma. And he was great again in 2010, 3.44 ERA, 1.17 whip, and 31 saves. And those were the only 2 seasons in his career in which he recorded a save. He was then forced to have Tommy John surgery in 2011. He didn't pitch at all that year. He returned and signed a deal to pitch for the Yankees in 2012, but he only appeared for 1 game in pinstripes. He then signed with the Marlins as a free agent prior to 2013, but was released by mid-May. But he did catch on with the Mets shortly after and was solid enough with a 4.31 ERA across 39 and 2/3 innings. Ardsma became a free agent again and went through 3 organizations before ultimately landing in Atlanta in 2015 for what would be the final season of his career. He recorded a 4.70 ERA in that final year. And for his career, he had 1.8 baseball reference WAR across 337 innings with 340 strikeouts, a 4.27 ERA, a 1.42 whip, and 69 saves, which is good for 253rd on the all-time saves leaderboard. Ardsma appears first alphabetically on the all-time list of major league players. So that's what he has. That's what he gets to lay claim to for likely the rest of his career.
Very awesome. Yeah, I couldn't find any cool stat about David Ardsma other than he played with the Cubs. Obviously, he's first on the alphabet. The Cubs were so close to having the player first listed alphabetically and last. They traded Tony Zitch to Seattle before he could ever play, but They almost had it. They blew it.
Dang.
Way to go, Cubs. Way to go, Cubs. Go make some trades at the deadline. That'd be cool. We'd have more stuff to talk about. That's all we have for this episode of the Free Baseball Podcast. You need to check back in with us on Wednesday at 9:30-ish when we talk all the rest of the trades that have happened post-deadline. Have to be there, and you can find out when we're going live by following the Athletes Hub on Twitter at Athletes Hub, or you can follow our Twitters. Mine's listed on the screen at DVSBert, and Jake Crumpler is listed too at Jake Crumpler. You can go read all of Jake Crumpler's stuff on all of his Crumpler-based websites and articles for where he writes, like the excellent website known as
Pitcher List. Yeah, pitcherlist.com. Great website. Go check it out. You can find all of my work at crumplerbaseball.com. I also write for Baseball HQ and do a couple podcasts for Pitcher List. So got a lot of stuff. I do got to go update my website, but I am about to go see Oppenheimer with my family.
The Crump Dog Gajillionaire.com. That's what you have to go to. So it's been a good 69 episodes of the podcast.
Yes.
Really nice time tonight. So you can check out everything also at Athletes, obviously at Athletes Hub on Twitter, or you can go to the website, which is theathleteshub.org. They sponsor our podcast. They make a bunch of articles on all sorts of sports, not just baseball. We do the baseball part mostly in podcasting sphere for us. But check out everything. It's sort of like a fan-driven site with articles that are really easily digestible, pretty short reads, enjoyable stuff. That's all we have for now. Jake's got to go see Oppenheimer.
I do.
Yeah. So, smell ya. Go away.
Smell ya.
No more baseball for tonight.